Well, good evening. My name is Tim Burkhart. I'm the Vice President of Estate and Gift Planning here at the Free Methodist Foundation.
And I am Chris DeBacker. We are so glad that you are with us this evening. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your busy day to hopefully learn maybe something you haven't learned before, or maybe refresh what you once knew and forgot. So we're happy to share with you tonight.
It's a great opportunity to be able to present to you. Chris, some of this information we're getting ready to share has been materials that we've used quite for some period of time, but it's new and fresh every time we present it, because really it all has to do with each of us as unique individuals and how God has blessed us with all kinds of different blessings and resources. And so it's just fun to be able to talk through some of these ideas and these concepts and present them in a way that is hopefully meaningful to people. And as we begin to start here this evening, I want to also just let you know that we have a complete team here available to assist you no matter where you're at. And so looking across the United States, there's actually 7 of us that are available to answer your questions. And as we're even here this evening together, you may have questions that you want to raise up, and we actually have people standing by where you can email Amy Wise at awise@fmfoundation.org, awise@fmfoundation.org. And we'd really encourage you just to throw out some questions there. There are no bad questions, and we appreciate each and every one, and it gives us an added dimension to our presentation this evening, and we'd like to cover as many of those as we can. If we can't cover them all, we'll make sure that we will address every single question as it comes. And then also, if for any reason you're able to hear us and you're having difficulties or something like that, there is a phone number which you could call right now. It's 517-841-5810. 517-841-5810, and you'll reach Amy as well at that line, and she'll be able to assist you with any types of questions you might have or difficulties in regards to our presentation. And we also know that there are several of our agencies and ministries that have promoted this, and we just want to acknowledge them as well this evening. Greenville College, who sent out some significant emails. I know Roberts Wesleyan College did, the South Atlantic Conference, Southern Michigan Conference, and I'm sure there's even many more that have been engaged in this. And so it's a new approach, a little bit different, and there's just some really exciting new technologies and ways of doing this. In fact, we've done this a lot with individuals as they have had individual meetings with us because of time and distance and travel expenses and things like that. When people have questions, we were able to do it. In fact, I had someone just the other day, Chris, I was meeting like this, and they said, they like this format because they don't have to clean up the house if we come over. So just, they can create one little space and say, hey, this is okay, and this is my space, and here's where we'll, share together. And so as we create this space and we share together this evening, we hope that you'll find some information that's really helpful. And in fact, we've already had significant feedback from individuals about, hey, when are you going to do the next one of these? The date, this particular date didn't work out. And so we've kind of brainstormed that some and said, the second Thursday of the month, and right now we're going to say 11 a.m. Eastern. We're going to continue this type of thing. We have a number of different topics that we'd like to discuss, but we know that this one topic is a real popular one, and it's one that people like to engage on. And so we're going to do this again on September the 11th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be essentially another live version of this presentation, and then we're going to do some leadership development types of things, plan giving for pastors and leaders, same second Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. Eastern, and then again in November. And just stay tuned, because we'll no doubt be doing more things like this. If you just want to call our offices and ask when's the next one of those webinar things that you've been doing, and then if there's special needs that you've got in regards to communications, we'll work with you at that point as well. And we're just so honored that you're taking the time to engage with us and to participate here this evening. One of the things that we also want to announce here is that just within the last 24 hours, we've launched a new version of our planned giving website. Those of you who are on our e-newsletter and have received that for a while. If you have not, you can go to www.fmfgiftplan.org, and if you'll see there on the lower right-hand side of the screen, you can sign up for our e-newsletter. Also, there's some great resources there on how to plan your will. In fact, you can begin today, this evening, and you could go onto this website and enter in a secure username and a password and begin pulling your stuff together to say, hey, I'm going to take that next step today. I'm going to begin, I know I needed to be doing this, or even if it's just an update and you're looking to say, hey, I know I need to take that next step and begin to update my plan. There's some great resources there for you. So you'll notice when you do go to this site, if you've been on there before, that it has been redesigned. In fact, there's a great picture of Chris there in the lower left, and a video. Actually, we've just celebrated a 10-year anniversary on this video that we've released, and we've been using it for quite some period of time. And some of the similar concepts and ideas that we're presenting here this evening are in fact in this video that leads out with Chris DeBacker. And so we just, anytime you're at a place that you wanted to have kind of review some of these ideas, you could come to this website, and then you can go from there and learn a little bit more. Just some other great personal planners, some great news information, gift options, you know, what to give, how to give. How many times do we get the question, Chris, on how to better give? And how many times have we gotten the question whereby they said, hey, I wished I'd met you before I, you know, sold that asset or did that particular legal maneuver, or, you know, got rid of that business or that stock or that mutual fund or something like that. And so we're here to engage at those levels, and there's never any pressure, but just to be able to answer your questions and assist you with what you are asking. We have some really neat calculators that help you. In fact, one of these calculators is really, they're all neat, but one in particular, I know there are a lot of people that are at the bank, they're getting 0.5% or 1% on their money, and things like a charitable gift annuity. What would that look like if I were to create one of those? And if I had an extra $10,000 or $5,000 and I just wanted to get maybe a 6, 7, 8% return, what would that look like? And so charitable gift annuities is one of those tools in which you can get an income, but yet then you know, a much more significant maybe income, and then leave a ministry gift to your ministry of choice. And then also for people that you might know that maybe are professional advisors, attorneys, CPAs, financial planners, accountants, those types of folks that want to stay up to the cutting edge on a lot of the ideas and the concepts that we discuss. There's a whole resource section in our website for them that helps them. In fact, there's a complete charitable tax reference library. In fact, you know what it's like to go into a library and you see this vast space of books and resources. That is all packed into this website for people like that. And so you may even be in a board meeting of one of your ministries, charities, could be your local church, and they have a question about how to give appreciated property, stocks, mutual funds, what it's like to give timber or precious metals, or maybe any other unusual types of arrangements or gifts. And believe it or not, Chris, the answers are there. And in fact, this is the resource that we use many times when we're looking up for very complex cases that we're processing and considering here at the Free Methodist Foundation. So as you're kind of processing that information, again, aywise@fmfoundation.org, and we're just going to start jumping right into the materials here, and we're going to have a great time together. We all, as we go through our stewardship journey, have different goals. Some of them are very similar, and some of them are just a little bit different. And many of those goals are birthed out of our relationship with God. And many times God uses other individuals to help mold us and shape us into His image. And we all have different amounts of time. Some of us may be in a phase of life where we're thinking more about these types of things, and we have different talents that we all bring to the table, and we also have different treasures that we bring. And so we want to acknowledge the fact that each of us are quite unique and individual, and the plans that we help people with are very unique and very special, each one of them. And so whether a person has a little or a lot, it makes no difference to us. We still process them exactly the same. In many instances, we are bringing the best resources that we can find, or we're going out and finding the best resources that we can find on an ongoing basis to help people better refine their stewardship journey and get to a place where they believe that God is calling and directing them to go.
Tim, you're right. Each person is so unique in what the Lord has blessed them with and how the Lord is shaping them in their lives. But I think there are some things that can be pretty consistent from person to person. And I think this is one example. And it's how each one of us really should, in a real prudent way, structure our financial house so that if there is some kind of unexpected life thing that happens, so that could be, I mean, they're numerous, but it could be a short-term unemployment. Maybe you're laid up because of a sickness. You're not able to go into work for a while. Maybe you've got unexpectedly your home needs a new roof. Okay, there's a number of things that could come along that could potentially derail and really upset your financial house. But we really believe that if you structure your financial house in the way we're showing here, and that is starting at your base, at the lowest level here of this pyramid, with these 4 cornerstones, we really think that if you structure your financial house that way, and then work your way up after you've got your cornerstones in place, you're going to be able to weather a lot of those financial difficulties and that kind of turmoil without really derailing your goals and plans. And really, it all starts in the lower right-hand corner there with a budget. And that seems pretty simplistic, but it's really the thing that drives everything else. You really need to have a good grasp on how much money you've got coming in versus how much you've got going out. And then from that, you're able to give birth to a giving plan. And we know that in Malachi, the Lord says, you know, a good starting point to give to my kingdom is 10%. And like I said, that's really kind of the starting point. And if you're able, the great thing is you can work into your budget potentially more to be able to give. And it's so neat to be able to give deliberately and intentionally when the Holy Spirit's calling you to do so, and to know that you've got that worked into your budget. And then we're going to talk in depth here in just a couple moments about an estate plan. But the one I want to touch on here, Tim, before we do that is the financial plan. That's another cornerstone, and that's so varied from person to person. Each person, like you had just mentioned, is so unique, and their goals are so unique, and it's important to have a plan in place to make sure you're going to have every chance to get those goals achieved. And then as you have that financial plan in place, you kind of work your way up the pyramid. But again, I think it's important to start at the base and then work your way up. But
Chris, you know, one of the things that I notice as people come to me over the years with questions, it seems like there's a tendency that they come to us with questions more on the peak of the pyramid. They had some special, very unique thing, almost to the, you know, it's just different. But sometimes it's very simple, where they're just saying, you know, hey, I have a question about my retirement plan. And so we can answer that question. But what we generally try to do is say, hey, that's a great question. Let's answer that. But let's think about the more foundational issues. You know, have we really thought through some of these 4 cornerstones here? The financial plan, the estate plan, the giving plan, the budget. The budget helps you to create some margin in such a way that you can actually venture into a financial plan. You can venture in more now to say, hey, you know, God owns it all anyway. And so as a result of that, now maybe I'm just going to trust him, and I'm just going to, you know, of course, give to him, and then see how he blesses back in return. So it's just really fun to watch people as they go through their stewardship journey in there. And so as we kind of think about that, you know, there are a lot of great resources on the budgeting, but one of the things that I think God has blessed our ministry is we have some great certified financial planners, people that can assist with a financial plan. And we just released a new tool that's on the website. And so let's talk about that for a moment, Chris.
Yeah, what you're going to see here is really a sample of a person who input their data through this tool that we've got out there, and the results on the left-hand side show their current situation. And what you're going to see there is a red part on their graph. And what that represents is a shortfall. And they're specifically looking at retirement. They're wondering, are we on track for retirement? And it looks like they've got a good part of it covered. 80% is taken care of, but there still is a shortfall. And then what we're able to do on the right-hand side, or really what you're able to do on your own, is adjust a number of different variables there. You can look at that shortfall and say, well, we can do one of a number of things. We can reduce the amount of money that we might need in retirement. We might need to increase the age that we actually retire. Maybe we want to retire at 65, but this will show us that, well, you're more on track to retire at age 66. Or on top here, what this analysis showed is that if they were able to save $280 per month, they're going to have their goals achieved by 100%. So it's really a good starting point to help people begin this journey. And really what we found does is it takes the gray areas of life. When can I retire? Do I have enough money to save for my children's education? Those kinds of things that you kind of have an idea on, but it turns those things from gray to really black and white. And you've got those pretty firm numbers to let you know if you're on track or not.
Chris, this is really exciting because really, how many times have we had people come to us and say, I've really been thinking about this, I've been praying about this, but I'm not sure that I'm ready for that. Can I really afford to do that? And one of the neat, again, like you said earlier, taking the gray areas and making them more black and white. I can remember one gal that we met with one time where we actually did this type of calculation, and we said, hey, Stella, you could live to be 128, and you're going to have enough, and yet, you can still even do what you're wanting to do in this given situation.
That's a pretty neat thing. It provides a lot of peace of mind, and it's a great tool, and it's not meant to replace working with a professional. I think it's a good starting point. But again, I think it's a tool that'd be worth looking at. If you go to www.guidestreamfinancial.com, you'll be able to see that.
And if any of these items that you have difficulty finding, feel free to give us a call at our offices and we'll step you through them. And of course, the information that you enter in on this website is a secure website, and that information is not shared with anyone for marketing purposes or otherwise. Let's talk, Chris, a little bit about life cycles. We're all at a different place in the journey. I can remember meeting one time with a very young couple, and when we added everything up that they actually had a negative net worth. But yet still it's very important. They're on a journey and they were asking awesome questions. And I know for a fact they're not in a negative net worth now, but it's just fun to watch them, whether they're at their creation or the accumulation, as they've been blessed and they have this earning potential and they've been able to create some margin in their budgets and be able to actually accumulate something. And then later on in life, when they get to the place of conservation, you don't want to risk it all when you're in the middle of your retirement phase. And then you may have other certain goals that you want to conserve for or to be able to make sure that the family is provided for. And then ultimately to honor your wishes. There's nothing worse than going through the whole idea of a plan and then only to see that the distribution comes out a much different way than what they ordinarily would have planned. There's no security in knowing for sure. We know that God can help us and gives us wisdom to make decisions that are really the right decisions for us. And so wherever you're at in this journey, creation, accumulation, conservation, distribution, hopefully you haven't come to that place of distribution yet. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on the phone call here. But we're all in a different place. And so let's talk just a little bit more about what is an estate.
Yeah. When you talk about distribution, Tim, that's really getting into estate planning. And I think before we go right there, real quickly, we need to define what an estate is. And I think a lot of people, when you think of an estate, you picture this. You picture a large mansion sitting on huge acreage, a lot of gardens, pools. And I think the reality is that most of us don't have a home like this.
Yeah, Chris, right? I don't know. I mean, I think most of the people that we meet with, I don't think they live in places like this. But in fact, they tend to be a little bit more average.
Yeah, probably a little more modest home. Maybe you've got a checking account. Perhaps you've been fortunate and accumulated some stocks, bonds, retirement accounts. represented by the nest egg here. And then we've also got personal property. We all have our houses filled with stuff and barns filled with stuff. We build barns to fill with our stuff. And then we may be fortunate to have life insurance as well. And all these things really make up an estate. And if you've got any of these things, it's really important to do some kind of planning at some level to care for those things, because the Lord has blessed us with those, and it's really our responsibility to make sure those are cared for even when we're no longer able to do so.
Okay, well, let's talk for a few moments about the actual planning process. Chris, one of the top questions that I get, or even statements it may be, where we say, you know what, I'm getting all my stuff together, and as soon as I get it all together, then I want to meet with you. I want to sit down and talk with you about my stuff and my property and my plans. And I can't tell you how many times that generally doesn't work. And the fact is that we never really arrive when we get to our plans. We just really have to just jump in. And in fact, when we travel around the country and we may be speaking at a local church or going someplace like that, and most of the appointments we set with people are points of which they just jump in and they're ready to go. Maybe they're not ready to go, but they at least start at that place. And so we just thought it'd be kind of helpful for you to see that to get this started, a lot of times the answers are right at your fingertips. And they're right available for you. In fact, you know who your family is. You know in general the types of property and the things that you own. If you don't own that estate on the prior slide, you probably know that right now, and so you know the types of properties that you own. How is the property owned? Whose name is on that asset? As we're going about doing our life's stuff, we are in fact making decisions every day as to what our estate plan looks like. If we buy a house and put the name in joint tenancy between husband and wife, or just put it in one name or another, that is a part of your plan. And so we just have a discussion about that, and we begin to really then discover what is it that a person has. And usually people are surprised to find out that they have more than they realize when they add it all up. When you take your home and you take your IRA or your retirement plan and you take all these various assets and put them together, one of the biggest aha moments that we have with people is say, oh, you got to be kidding. I didn't realize that. And so they take it back and they look at it and say, oh, yeah, it is kind of that. And so then we begin to the journey even further. And then eventually we get this put down on a piece of paper. And, good intentions are wonderful things, but unless we get them actually signed and initiated, then we've really failed in many regards. And so we want to be successful. We want to help you be successful in getting a plan put together in such a way that your plans, your wishes, God's plan for you and your life is carried out in a very significant way. And many times people, as they further this plan, they may start it out with their first document, and now they're progressing and they're saying, I thought about this, but the kids were younger at that point in time. Now the kids have grown and they have their kids. And so as a result, we've been thinking this. And so it's important for us to go back and look at those documents and say, what do we need to do different? How do we need to change things? Maybe we want, instead of principal for the family, we want to provide them with an income. We have healthcare issues that have come up, or what if we're disabled? What about the charitable things in our life? We're going to talk about that in just a few moments. To reduce the probate costs, what are some ways? We're going to talk about that. And then also estate taxes. Chris, we don't run into as many people as we used to run into that have estate tax issues or concerns. With the new limits that are there, you can many times shelter over $10 million from federal estate tax for a husband and wife. And so this is a less of a concern. But on the contrary, most people still have a very significant income tax issue that they have to think about, because if they have a retirement plan, an IRA, a 401k, a 403b, those are the types of assets that can be very adversely taxed if they have not thought through ways and strategies to care for that. And then ultimately, we want to give a gift of peace to the family so that they know that things are carried out. And there's nothing more fun than to travel around the country and run into folks and say, you don't know how much this has given us peace, either at the point of having the plan or even at the point of executing the plan. It's just wonderful to have them taken care of and not to have to worry about those issues.
Those are great words, Tim, the gift of peace. And I think this is another extension of that. It's really the first thing you want to think about when you're doing estate planning. A lot of people say, what happens when I pass away? But the reality is that there's some things that could happen to you during your lifetime that would render you incapacitated. So that is, you're still living, but for one reason or another, you don't have the ability to make decisions for yourself. So either physically, you're perhaps in a car accident, or something is keeping you physically from being able to make decisions, or maybe it's mentally. Maybe you've got dementia, or someone's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, so they're still going, but they can't make these decisions. And what you're going to see on this first slide is it's really all about control. If you simply do nothing, the state is going to determine, if you become incapacitated, who that person is who's going to make financial decisions for you. So with all of these things listed on the left-hand side, you don't automatically, or that your spouse rather doesn't automatically get control of those assets. And it's really up to you to put a document in place called a durable power of attorney. It's a pretty simple document, Tim, but it allows you to name the person who you want to have be in charge of making financial decisions for you. And then the extension of that is, what happens if I need healthcare decisions made for myself? Really, you want to be able to find a person that you really trust when you're incapacitated, who can make small medical decisions, major medical decisions, what kind of medication I'm going to receive, what type of treatment options I might want if I'm not able to make those decisions on my own. And that's all done through a healthcare power of attorney. So again, you maintain control over that process by naming the person you want to have making those decisions. And then if your life is being prolonged only by artificial means, and you've been diagnosed by your attending physician saying you've got an illness that you're just not going to recover from, or you're in an irreversible coma, something of that nature, where the doctors have said you're just simply not going to get better. By having what's called a living will, or in some states it's called an advance directive, you're able to appoint a person to carry out your wishes. And in essence, what you would have said through this document is that don't go to any heroic measures to keep me going, because I've got a home in heaven to go to, and it's okay to let me go there. So you're really just giving permission to a person that you love and trust to let you go in that case. And again, without that document, the court is going to step in and determine what they think is best for you. So, start with those documents: a durable power of attorney, a healthcare power of attorney, and a living will as a starting point. And then, Tim, why don't you transition us here? I think one of the big questions that some people have is, what's the difference between a living will and a last will and testament? I think sometimes those get confused. And when do you use these versus when do you use the last will and testament?
Good question, Chris. In fact, living will, and then living trust, kind of a play, different, similar kind of, put this word before that one or whatever, but it's, in fact, they're really quite different documents. So Chris just described what the living will, you're still alive, but you're giving directives in regards to how far to go with continuing to sustain your health care. And then a will, of course, is an instrument that is written hopefully during your lifetime, and then it's carried out at death. And you can create a lot of different wills during your lifetime, but it's your last will that prevails. And then we're going to talk in a few minutes about a living trust and the difference between that. So each one of them very distinctively different, and as you'll see in our notes here, and we'll explain. So at death, a person either has a will or you don't, and if there is no will, then it's controlled by the state. The state has what I'm going to call as a recipe, and each state maybe just a little bit different in the recipe. And so you follow that recipe and you settle the person's estate, and it's pretty straightforward in that regard. It is a public process. There is, again, more, you're more exposed publicly in regards to what you have and the types of assets and things like that. One of the neat things about a will is that now we know exactly what you want. And that's one of the really neat aspects of creating a will, is that you have the legal right to say, here's my recipe. Here's the way I want to put things together. So it tastes just the way you want it to be tasting when it's all put together. And so one of the misnomers that many times people don't understand, they think that when they do a will, they are actually avoiding probate. And actually a will is an instrument of probate. And so the good news is that you're able to carry out your exact wishes of what you want. And there's nothing wrong with the will. Certainly that's what it's designed to do. And in certain states, doing probate is easier than other states. And that's a place where we could easily have a conversation to say, what's it like in the state of Washington versus Florida or Texas or Michigan. And so, again, a will is an instrument of probate. And usually as a part of that, then the last will is administered under the court, and they will issue what we call letters in testamentary. And those letters then are used kind of like a power of attorney when you were alive to take about your business or the deceased person's business and settling their affairs. On the right-hand side, you see contract law, essentially. And so we have probate law, we have contract law. And so contract law is where you can actually bypass probate. So here you see a very short list of some of the instruments that are used under contract law: joint tenants with right of survivorship, life insurance, retirement plans, whatever kind of retirement plan you have. Very likely, if there's a stated beneficiary as a part of that investment or that instrument, such as a life insurance policy, then it can go probate free. But just the other day I had a gentleman call me and he says, Tim, I put the beneficiary to be to my estate. You know, how does that work? And as an example. And so here you have an example of using a contract that actually goes to his probate estate. It doesn't say it that way, but that's what it means, is it goes to your probate estate. So that is a contract that actually refers it to probate in that given instance. So you have to look at each and every investment that you're working with. And so what we're saying here is, again, you can do a will, but a will is just really the last instrument to catch the asset. It may have already been directed by some other contract.
So I'm looking at this slide and I'm thinking, if I'm on the right-hand side here, if I've got those things as part of my estate, those are pretty good things. Those are good things to have.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the other takeaway that I'm seeing, and I think this is important to know, is that even if you have a will, there's still going to be some involvement with the court. It's not going to avoid that. But the things on the right-hand side, if you have those are free and clear from the court. Those just kind of operate all on their own.
Yeah, and I think another real great takeaway is the fact is that it's really important to make these things consistent. How many times do you see an estate plan, Chris, where the will says one thing and someone's beneficiaries say something different? And one of the real common questions that we get is that, you know, which one of those is going to prevail? I did a will. It says it all goes to my wife, but I have a life insurance policy that was purchased when I was a kid, and it names my parents as a beneficiary. So in that given situation, it's the contract that prevails, and it would be the life insurance policy. So, you know, again, that's an easy way of unintentionally disinheriting your family and that type of thing. So we want to make sure that all these things work together.
Tim, I think the one good thing that we should touch on here that's also is part of a will, for those of you that have minor children, you know that they are absolutely the jewels in your crown, and you would do anything for them. And you know, you want to make provisions for them. If the Lord calls you home, you want to make sure that those children have a guardian, a caregiver that's going to be somebody that shares your values and is going to be someone that is worthy of raising those special kids. And what a will allow you to do is put a provision in there to appoint that person. And again, you maintain control over that process by having those provisions in place. You eliminate the court from appointing a person. And the thing I think that's important to know from here is that there is guardianship. So that's the actual physical caregiver that you can appoint a person. And then there's another responsibility as well, and that is who's going to be the person who's going to manage any dollars that you leave behind for your minor children. You know, a child can't receive money to manage on their own until they reach the age of 18. And so if you have minor children that receive an inheritance, it's going to be important for you to appoint a person to manage those dollars for them until they reach the age that you think they don't need money manager anymore, right? And the minimum age is 18. It can be anywhere north of that. You can say they need to be 25, 30, 35 years old before the trustee is no longer responsible for managing those dollars. So the thing, I guess, with these two slides to know is that when you've got minor children, you get to appoint a guardian, the physical caregiver, and then you get to appoint a trustee for the children's trust. That is the person who's going to manage money for those children. And they can be the same person, certainly, or they can be two separate people completely. So it's really depends on your situation, your family members, and what their capabilities and gifts are.
So again, I can have someone in the family that's really a good caregiver for my kids, but yet maybe they're not the best with managing money, so I can select someone different, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, that can be changed throughout your lifetime as maybe as you move states, as family members move away from you, as you develop relationships in a different way, you can change that throughout your lifetime.
Great, Chris. Thanks for helping us out with that. If you have other questions, we're glad to share. There's so many different concepts that can be employed. In fact, let me just share one real quick, is that because we work with Christian attorneys in preparing documents, one of the things they always try to mention is we put a number of clauses in documents that are within the values of Christian upbringing and of our children. So, for instance, keeping the children together as a family unit, placing them in a home where they receive Christian training and upbringing in harmony with my beliefs. Little things like that that I think are really key, that we just generally don't see in average documents that a person might just happen to meet with an attorney to create. So let's transition here for a few moments and talk about what is a revocable living trust. In fact, as we list here on the page, it's a part of contract law. So it's a simple agreement, and if you're married, it's an agreement between a husband and wife, and essentially it represents their wishes. It's a document that you can create during your lifetime. More or less, you kind of get a chance to test drive it and make sure it works the way you would want it to work. And another key element of what a revocable living trust is that it has joint trustees if you're married, husband and wife. So if we use the analogy of a vehicle, like a car that we have, you can imagine both the husband and wife have a set of keys to the vehicle. So if one can't drive it, the other one can, and vice versa. It is a joint trust, so they have equal access to the contents of the trust at all times. And one of the key aspects of creating a living trust is putting the things that you own in the trust. And actually, this is something that most attorneys don't do in a conventional revocable living trust. The way you get assets into a living trust is by the way you title the assets. We have some sample language down here at the bottom that just to help you to understand the concept of using your name as trustee under trust dated, and then this is the date you actually sign your documents. And this date goes with you really for the rest of your life. And in fact, I've worked with a number of families over the years, one in fact that created 17 amendments during her lifetime. And she just she changed her mind a few times and gave some things away later on, decided, hey, I need to change this again. And so again, a living trust is one of those documents that can kind of grow with you along the way. And unlike a will, where if you amend it, it actually it can be one of those things where the more paper, the more interpretation, and the more cost that it takes to settle things. In a living trust, they're usually pretty straightforward in that regard, and it's not too hard to manage.
Yeah, and so the thing that is important here, Tim, is you're saying to put things into your trust. I heard you say that. You want to make sure the name of your trust is actually on your assets, right?
So if you have a bank account down the street, if your bank account's still in the name of Chris DeBacker, it's not in your trust. But if it's in the name of Chris and Heidi DeBacker as trustees under the Chris and Heidi DeBacker Trust, dated, that's the language that you're looking to be. In fact, one of the things you should do, Chris, is go back, as you know, look at your documents, look at the instructions that are given to you by the attorney, and they actually spell out the recommended language for your given trust. And there's usually a funding language document that accompanies your trust, and you should always look at that document and make sure you're doing it right. In fact, sometimes people call us in our offices and they say, give me that language again. And so we have to, depending on the attorney that's written the document, we may not have that at our fingertips. It's not usually just a cut and dry answer, but it generally follows a standard format similar to what you're looking at here at the bottom. But one of the key things, though, as we meet with people over the years, and the number one question that we usually ask is, have you funded your trust? And you can go to an average attorney's office and spend $250, $300 for a single visit, and only to ask the question, really, have you funded your trust? And then the information is right here to assist you to make sure that it's properly cared for.
Yeah. Now, Tim, tell me about those red dollar signs that are just kind of hanging out there all by themselves.
Great, Chris. Well, these dollars represent an account where you didn't do it right. Now, let's just say, for instance, you had a bank account down the street at the local bank, and it was just in your name as an individual, not in your trust name. And so if you die, those assets are not in the trust. They don't have the trust name on it. So what's happening is here, even though you have a living trust, everyone should have what's called a pour-over will. It may just say last will and testament on it, but this is a safety net, and the purpose of that pour-over will is to really clean up any messes that we leave behind. So you see these dollar signs sitting over here. The pour-over will would capture them, and it would put them actually into your trust. Now, there's good news and bad news here. The good news is it gets where you want it to go, and that's what you wanted. But the bad news is you probably know the answer.
Yeah, I'm liking that they're in my trust now, but I'm guessing because it's a will, we're going to have to see some probate here, right?
Very likely. Again, it can depend upon the size of the estate and what have you, but in many states, that threshold's pretty low, so it would probably be a probate involved in doing that, but at least it's worth asking the question as you're going through the process. So we could spend more time talking about trust. In fact, there's all kinds of types of trust. What we just described here this evening is what we call a revocable living trust, or actually it's a type of trust called a grantor trust, meaning that it's the same as you in every aspect of who you are. There are types of trusts that you could create that are what we call non-grantor trusts, which are not you anymore. They maybe have a trustee, again, not you, or it's just not considered to be part of your estate anymore. And so there are a lot of strategies that can take us down that path, and that's not really what we're going to talk about this evening, but it's something maybe we'll discuss at a future webinar. What I'd like to talk about here for the next few minutes is just the estate distribution. In reality, again, one of those simple concepts, there's only 3 places that you can give your estate. One is your family, your friends. Number 2, charities that you most love and appreciate. And 3, the government. And one of the really neat things that we get to do is come alongside people and help them with their questions. And many times they don't realize how much might be going to the government for taxes or administrative costs and things like that. And so just to be able to help a family be able to focus more on their family and friends and charity. And there's no prerequisite. You don't have to make a gift to charity or anything like that to meet with us. But I think what you'll find is that we can put together plans to make that all happen. We can give to your family. We can give to the ministries that you most love and appreciate. And it can really be a win-win kind of plan. But that's all up to you and what you decide that you want to do. And the other thing that we believe strongly in is helping a child or a relative to be a better person. We want them to ultimately grow up to know Christ, to make him known. There are a lot of strategies in doing that, and we don't really have one set strategy other than just to explore, is it better to stretch it over time, or is it better to give it all at once? Is it better to have an income or to defer it to a point like retirement in the future? Or perhaps to say, I think this much is enough, and beyond that amount, it would be better to use the money for these purposes. And so just to have that conversation to explore. And Chris, one of the other things I find that's really interesting going through this process is that it just helps if a person's married to have that point of exploration for a husband and wife to actually hear each other and to know what one thought. I never really thought about that until actually dealing with families who are now grieving after having lost a loved one, to say, I only wish they had told me a little bit more about that. And if we had just simply had a conversation about that, it would have been such a gift to me to have that experience, to have that communication. And so why wait till then? We're here and now, and we can begin having that conversation, and we're just honored to be able to assist you in that process.
You know, Tim, one thing I think is really neat, you talk about having a conversation with your spouse that's really meaningful. I think this is one of those areas where you are able to have, I mean, this is a life-changing kind of conversation when you talk about what kind of bequest are we going to leave, really what kind of legacy are we going to create for our kids. And I think a really good plan, a really good estate plan is one that points your surviving family members to Jesus and really shows them the kind of faith that you had. And it's really just a tangible way of showing them it's a testimony, showing them what your testimony is by the ministries, charities that were important to you during your lifetime, by you including them in your estate plan. It just speaks volumes about what was important in your lifetime. And there's a lot of ways that you can do this when you make a bequest to your ministry of choice. A lot of times people will do that as a percent because they don't know how much they're going to have when they pass away. It could be a good deal. It may not be as much. And a percent always reflects, their intention, the amount that they want to give as a whole of their estate, regardless if it's grown or if it's shrunk. Of course, you can always do a fixed amount, or you can give a specific property gift if you have something like that in mind. There's a lot of ways you can go with this, but I think the important thing is really just to include something like that in your plan, because it really just does shows the kids, shows your family members what was important to you during your lifetime. And then when you do it, there's a lot of ways that you can make a gift like this. Again, it's important as you look at the slide there to give to those ministries that you were supporting during your lifetime. If you're unsure of where to give, I think that's a great place to start. And then if you go down to the third and fourth bullet point, these are, I think, the big points in this slide. When you make a gift like this through your will, you can either give it as an endowment or as an outright gift. And if you decide that you want to give it as an endowment, you're saying that I want this ministry to receive these dollars, but not have full access to them right now. I'd like to see them just receive the earnings, the interest that this generates. And really, an agreement like that is going to happen from now until Jesus comes. That's just going to continue in perpetuity forever. And that's a neat way to talk about leaving a legacy. That's something that's going to last forever. Of course, ministries can use those dollars right now, and that's what happens when you make an outright gift. So it's your money today, and when you pass away, you're saying, I want my ministry to receive that tomorrow, no strings attached. And then you can also say, I want this to be designated for a specific purpose. I want to give this to my alma mater for use in the music department, or I want to give this to my church to be used for an outreach program. So that's a designated gift, as opposed to an undesignated gift, which is saying I want to give this money to my alma mater, and there's no strings attached. They can use this however they see best fit. And of course, you can always change your mind with this as you want to. The only time that becomes irrevocable or unchangeable is when you pass away. So as you may acquire an affinity for another ministry, you can always include them in your plan, and it's changeable at any time.
Great. You know, Chris, I was just meeting with one of our ministries, I think it was last week, and they kind of caught me off guard in the fact that they were sharing with me that they really appreciated when they receive designated gifts in a certain way, which many ministries that we work with prefer an undesignated gift to allow them that discretion, that flexibility to go after the mission of what they're accomplishing. But then there are actually some ministries that would prefer a designated gift, and that kind of caught me off guard a little bit. But then then they explained their strategy, and so it made me think a little bit more about the fact that it really helps to have a conversation, at least to know that what you're engaged in doing is going to really make a difference in a way that would essentially help the ministry, as well as honor your wishes and what you want to have accomplished. And so, and we can actually engage with you at that point anonymously to try to help you figure out, is this the best way? Could it be done a better way? And so without using names to actually make contact and make sure that your gift will be stewarded in the highest and best manner.
Tim, I think one of the best concepts is coming up right here on this next slide. Can you help go through this with us? A lot of times we might get a person who would say, I don't feel like I have enough to give to ministry. I'd like my kids to receive it all, which is a valid point. I don't have enough, or I'd just really like to see my kids benefit first, and then I'd like to be able to give to ministry, but I just don't know how to make that balance. Can you walk us through this concept? I think it's kind of a neat one.
And I like to describe it as saying, whether you have a lot or a little is much, especially in God's eyes. And you think of the widow's mite and how much Scripture emphasizes, the heart of giving and what you're trying to accomplish there. And so, in fact, as we work with people, very common for them to do outright gifts. So again, as a part of the distribution of the estate, yours today, and then of course you pass away, theirs tomorrow. And this can be done in a percentage. In fact, family is taken care of in this manner, as well as ministries are taken care of in this manner. So I think we're all very familiar with that. And then the other strategy is to invest it and then to pay an income of the value of the trust. So we use what's called a charitable remainder unit trust, which is a very common tool that we use to take certain assets, such as an IRA, for instance. One of the most adversely taxed assets in a person's portfolio is their retirement plan. And so what are, as you think about an IRA, it grows tax deferred over time, right? And so interestingly enough, a charitable remainder unit trust is a tax-deferred instrument as well. And so you can continue on that efficiency of the IRA through something like a charitable remainder unit trust and pay out so much income each year to the family member for as many as 20 years after you're gone. And then the other thing that's really neat about that is that if you just took a simple rate of return like 8% and then paid that again over the 20 years, that would be about 160% of the estate that would be paid out to them, while still leaving a very significant remainder to your ministry of choice. So any one of the ministries that we serve, you can select, or just whatever your ministry list looks like, we can assist you in putting together a plan that is meaningful for you in that given situation. So here you see both the kids getting a piece of that. You also see the ministry. And it is required by law that you do have to select a 501c3 charitable organization as a part of this tool and the way that it operates. But it actually is a very popular thing. In fact, if you think about it, when most people receive money, it is unusual for them to they don't always spend it right at once. They usually take that money, hopefully, and reinvest it and use it for their future and what have you. So let's talk for a moment just about the IRA. I mentioned it for a moment, and one of the best tools usually for giving is an IRA. It's an individual retirement account. It could be a 401k or 403b, any types of retirement plan. And essentially, some planners refer to an IRA or retirement plan as a bad asset to give to your kids because it's taxed before it can be given to an individual. But the good news about that is that an IRA is not taxed to a charity if it's properly given. And so here's a place where we can have a dialogue to help you to make sure that whatever your goal is and however you're trying to accomplish it, that we can be most efficient to say, how do we use that IRA and how can we maximize it? It's a very significant asset that most people have. And then how do we maximize that? So again, IRA, use that interchangeably with retirement planning because that's what we're talking about. They're all generally taxed the same. It's called IRD, or income with respect to a decedent. And so we're here to assist people to answer questions on gifts of IRA assets. Even during lifetime, there are some strategies when you're age 70 and a half and older, which is beyond our agenda here today. Another idea that I just wanted to share as we're kind of wrapping up here this evening is just some unique strategies. Aside from estate planning, you may be at a place where God's blessed you with an appreciated asset, a business, a stock, a mutual fund, or whatever the asset is. And what we don't like to see is when someone comes to us after the fact course, you're welcome to ask us, but they come to us after the fact and say, you know, I just sold my business and I'm trying to do some tax planning here. Usually that tax planning needs to come up front before the business is actually sold. And there's a number of strategies that we can look at and consider. But one of the first ones, if you look on the far left there, the diagram, it says part in cash. Many times, instead of maybe taking it all in cash, it's better to take a part of it in cash. Say maybe if you have a home equity loan or something like that that you're trying to pay off, and so if you receive a part of that in cash, then that'll help you with that piece, and that's certainly understandable. But you may not want to take the whole amount that way. Another part for income, again, like we mentioned a minute ago, is that it's very unusual to take cash in a lump sum and just spend it all. Usually you want to reinvest it for the future in some way. And so to take part of it as income for the family and to consider that in a way that is tax efficient. And it's beyond our time to be able to do that, but just know that there are ways of looking at that and actually paying an income for a period of years so that you don't have to pay as much taxes on that. And then a third piece is to designate a part for your future giving. Here's a place where you can take so much of that stock as it's being sold. It doesn't have to be everything, but a percentage, 10 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar, whatever it is. And then we generally encourage people to look ahead and think for the next 3 to 5 years. Sometimes people do it 10 years to a lifetime, depending on the asset that they're selling, and to say, wouldn't it be neat if we could take care of that now and know that now I've got a charitable checkbook, not your customary checkbook that you write checks with, but a special checkbook that you put together as a part of your plans, where it then becomes the place where instead of using your checkbook, you use the charitable checkbook to make your gifts from. And so, again, these are all places where we can have future conversations and to visit with. And so, Chris, why don't you take us home? Last thought there is that many times we can do this with zero tax if we run the numbers. And so that's another thing that we can do. Never any obligation, but just to help you to see what would a zero tax scenario look like on the sale of a business.
Yeah, I think if we're just going to put a ribbon around tonight's talk, I think these are the big points here on why knowing how things are titled is important in this whole scheme. That's probably the first thing to look at. And then, should I have a will? Should I have a trust? What documents are important to have? I think those are the other questions that you want to begin asking. And then, how doing this kind of planning can reduce taxes. And we're talking about potential estate taxes. We're talking about income taxes, capital gains taxes. If you're proactive in your planning, you can reduce a lot of those taxes, if not eliminate some of those completely. And then, you can't sometimes quantify this, but just by making some charitable gifts, you're able to leave a legacy that your family will be able to follow. And you may be asking yourself right now, what do I do? What's the next step for me? I think the thing that you want to do to be able to continue down this road, to continue your journey, and not just take this information and leave with it tonight and say, wow, that was good information. And like Tim said earlier, I've got good intentions, but I never do any kind of planning with it. The next step, I think, go to our website, certainly, if you remember right from the beginning, www.fmfgiftplan. That's a great start. But then I think even better than that is, remember, you've got an entire team of people throughout the country that's waiting to serve you, that have just a heart for the Lord, have a heart for service, and they want to help you put a plan in place that's going to reflect what the Lord is calling you to do in your life. And each one of us is reachable at the 800 number there that you see at the top of your screen. I'm largely responsible for the central part of the United States, and I work very closely with Kerry Holman, who serves the Gateway and Wabash conferences. He lives in Greenville, Illinois. So if you're in that part of the country, Kerry can serve you with excellence there. And then we have Steve Macaluso, who a number of you might know as Mac, who lives in Rochester, New York, and he's able to serve you if you live in the eastern part of the country, along with Lee Christ, who lives in Florida, and he serves with excellence in that part of the country, in the South Atlantic part of the United States. And then we've got Arnie Brand, who lives in Seattle and serves the western part of our country, along with Don Bowers, who lives in Southern California. And then, of course, we've got Tim Burkhart who can assist no matter where you're at. And Tim just has a tremendous heart for the Lord, has a heart for this work, and just would love to do nothing more than see you put a fantastic plan in place that honors your family and honors the Lord. So we encourage you as we wrap up here, get in touch with us, take that next step and continue down this road to do something significant.
Chris, we're wrapping up here, and certainly we're at our point of an hour, but we do have some questions. If you want to hang on for them, we're going to make sure that each and every question has been answered here this evening. There are a few that have come in that we're going to address here, and the rest of them we'll do via email later on. But if you want to email us at awise, A-W-I-S-E, @fmfoundation.org, we'll be glad to take your individual questions in a confidential manner and answer them. But a few quick ones here, Chris, that we have. Do my children have to pay an inheritance tax when I leave them money at my death? Maybe you can quickly address that one.
Well, there's not so much of an inheritance tax. I think you might have touched on that a little bit earlier, the federal estate tax, that exemption amount, in a lot of ways to simplify this, in a lot of cases allows a married couple to pass along $10 million of assets to their children without there being a federal estate tax applicable to that. Now, there may be some other taxes, income taxes, capital gains taxes, but there's really, for the majority of Americans now, unless you own significant assets, there's not going to be an inheritance or an estate tax per se.
Then I have actually two more questions. I'll try to wrap them into one. Where do we go to get documents? How do we begin that process?
You know, we're blessed here at the Free Methodist Foundation to work with 3 different attorneys who have offered their services at a very reduced cost because of the relationship that we have with various conferences and Free Methodist agencies throughout the United States. We're able to partner with attorneys like this and offer their services at a rate that's probably a quarter to a third of what they would normally charge. So I think if you start with your representative, the person that's in your area, I think that would be a great place to start, and then ultimately they can connect you with these attorneys that we work with. So we're very equipped to work with these Christian attorneys who can help you put some of these documents in place.
I'm not quite sure. I think I get this one. What is the best asset to give to my children? You know, I think I'll take that one. I'm going to say, you know, obviously we talked about items that you've already paid taxes on. That's a good asset to give, and probably one of the worst would be like your IRA, which obviously we mentioned about giving that to a charity or to ministry is a great one. But I guess, you know, the best thing you can give to your children is peace of mind and a sense of love for who you are and what you believe, what you stand for. That's what I see as one of the best gifts that you can give to your children, and just to know that you know, you've left a legacy of faithfulness to your family and faithfulness to God. And with that, we're just going to wrap up for this evening. We do want to encourage you to check back with us periodically. As I mentioned, the second Thursday of a given month, we're hoping to host more of these. We're going to try the next one at a different time frame at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, that would be 8 a.m. Pacific, and we're going to kind of mix it up a little bit and see maybe we can help some people in that time bracket. So we'll be doing a very similar presentation. It'll be live like this on the second Thursday of September, and then in October we're actually going to switch it around a little bit more, and we're going to do something for pastors and leaders, and specifically on helping them to better understand what is planned giving and how to bring in and help people, encourage people with their ministry gifts. So again, we wish you the best. We hope you have a great holiday week coming up here and next week or so. And thanks for taking the time to engage with us at the Free Methodist Foundation. If we can answer any questions, please give us a call. Have a great evening.